The DEA speaking only to Ali Bauman about the operation that they say has been targeting and tricking people online.
Imagine this: a regular morning at the Pentagon, America's most secure building. Behind an old printer, a hidden safe opens to reveal nearly 4 tons of cocaine, $74,000 in cash, and a loaded firearm. The owner, a senior military logistics advisor. This discovery leads to a massive network. CJNG, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, has infiltrated the U.S. government using real contracts and trusted employees to traffic weapons, launder money, and facilitate underground migration. Is this just the beginning? Has a second skeleton infiltrated national security? This video dives into the dark truth with FIRTF, the task force investigating this threat. Like, share, and comment below, what's the biggest threat? Subscribe for updates. On a December morning in 2025, when the season's first light snow had just dusted the roads leading into the Pentagon, an internal compliance inspection team began their routine workday. No one could have imagined that this very inspection would open a crack so deep it would shake the entire structure of national security to its core. Behind the dusty old office printer, which had sat unused for many months, they discovered a small safe that had been skillfully welded directly into the wall. When they pried it open, what they found inside brought complete silence to everyone in the room. 3,888 kilograms of pure vacuum-sealed cocaine, $74,000 stacked neatly in bundles, and a loaded Sig Sauer P320 pistol, ready to fire. The owner of the office was Michael Hanford, a senior policy advisor in the Strategic Logistics Division of the Department of Defense. He was not a temporary contractor or a member of the cleaning staff. Hanford had direct access to military transportation systems, the authority to approve container schedules, sign off on sensitive shipments, and even make changes to interagency customs databases. This discovery did not take place in some hidden warehouse or restricted area. It happened right in the heart of power inside a workspace that was considered absolutely secure. Hanford did not resist when he was taken into custody. He simply lowered his head and remained completely silent. That silence, to the investigators, felt more chilling than any confession could have been. They immediately sealed off the office and transported Hanford's personal laptop to Quantico for forensic analysis. When the cryptographers finally cracked through the layers of protection, what emerged was not a haphazard trail of evidence. It was a meticulously organized archive, hierarchically structured with folders clearly named according to specific functions. There were no emotional messages, no personal photographs, only pure, cold, and extremely dangerous data. The first folder was titled Shipments 2023-2025. Inside were 22 meticulously detailed entries, each one corresponding to a shipment described in exactly the same way as legitimate military equipment consignments. HS codes, contract numbers, custom seals, delivery schedules, carrier company names, everything matched perfectly with the records in both the Department of Defense and U.S. Customs Service systems. But when analysts cross-referenced the entries against the actual databases, they uncovered a terrifying pattern. For every legitimate shipment, there was a twin shipment that insiders privately called a ghost. These ghost containers traveled in the same convoys, on the same schedules, and under the same identification numbers as their official counterparts. Yet only one container was ever officially recorded. The other existed solely in internal logs created by trusted personnel. Checkpoints along the route from Texas through Tennessee to Maryland and North Carolina revealed subtle but consistent anomalies. Declared weights that did not match the actual scale readings, custom seals issued precisely at 2:47 a.m., and RFID scanners at border crossings that systematically skipped the second container without ever logging it. Every single irregularity was executed in a way that never triggered a single alert within the system. The cartel didn't have to break in. They had been handed the master key. Next is a double encrypted Excel spreadsheet. When opened, it lists 37 names, each accompanied by their job title, agency or workplace, level of system access, and a final column that simply reads in just 2 words: reliable. These individuals are not high-ranking officials or military officers. They are mid-level warehouse workers, spare parts procurement clerks, container inventory specialists, and administrative staff who handle customs clearance paperwork. On paper, their roles appear small and insignificant, yet they quietly hold real power. The ability to update real-time data, print security seals, approve schedule changes, and unlock the Federal Employee Identification System. The records of most of them are spotless. No criminal history, no disciplinary actions, performance evaluations consistently rated as good or better. Some receive regular wire transfers from offshore accounts under the names of logistics consulting firms or supply chain service companies. Others have indirect connections to shell entities that exist only on paper. They don't have to personally move prohibited cargo. All it takes is delaying a single inspection step, overlooking one alert line, or entering the wrong container code, and the entire operation flows smoothly. The cartel doesn't recruit blatant, greedy opportunists. It chooses people who understand the long-term value of silence. The third folder has only one word in the title: location. Inside is a list of 14 real estate properties scattered across Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina. According to public records, they are owned or leased by ordinary citizens: a substitute teacher, a retired couple, a college student, a young family. Rent is paid on time via bank transfer. Utility bills are at average levels. The neighborhoods are quiet with no complaints from neighbors. But when data from satellites, drone surveillance, and thermal sensors was analyzed, the picture changed completely. These houses showed intense activity at night, unusually high amounts of trash compared to the number of declared residents, and electricity usage spiking dramatically during unreasonable hours. Many locations showed signs of reinforced basements with steel doors and independent ventilation systems. A small apartment in the suburbs of Arlington consistently received between 4 and 7 different vehicles within a 10-day period. A senior living home in Fairfax continuously emitted jamming signals from encrypted communication devices operating non-stop. These locations were not temporary hideouts. They functioned as coordination centers, transshipment points for goods, strategic meeting sites, and short-term storage facilities. They operated like professional logistics hubs, the only difference being that they served a transnational criminal organization instead of a government. When the 3 major pieces came together, the entire picture became so clear it was chilling. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel wasn't just smuggling drugs. They had built a parallel system that mirrored almost perfectly the logistics and administrative machinery of the U.S. government. They borrowed real contracts, real employees, real processes, and real identification numbers to operate a criminal machine right in the heart of America. The only difference lay in the ultimate purpose: serving illegal profit instead of national security. This wasn't infiltration through brute force or blatant bribery. This was a slow, patient takeover built on a profound study of how the American administrative machinery actually works. You don't need to break down doors when you can print official seals. You don't need to run when you're the one issuing the transport codes. Federal analysts called it architectural system compromise, not a data leak, not a policy failure. It was the structural hijacking of the core framework causing the system to serve the enemy without ever realizing it. Do you support this war to eliminate these cartels? If yes, comment the number 2. If not, comment the number 5. From the office of a mid-level advisor, the investigation rapidly escalated into the most serious national security threat in decades. Analysts realized that if a criminal network could move goods, people, and money without tripping any alarms, the question was no longer how they had gotten in. The question became, how deeply had they penetrated? How many doors remained undiscovered, and how many more trusted assets were quietly operating within unchecked systems? As they dug deeper, the investigative team identified 3 primary operational corridors, each representing a distinct but tightly interconnected domain. The first corridor specialized in weapons. Through transportation companies that held long-term contracts with the Department of Defense, the CJNG smuggled large quantities of assault rifles, high-end handguns, and weapon components into the United States, items originating from smuggling networks in Guatemala and Colombia. Weapons containers were shipped alongside legitimate spare parts containers, using the same transport codes, the same schedules, and the same drivers. But only one container was ever recorded in the federal system. The second container existed solely in internal logs controlled by trusted employees. Many drivers and warehouse employees had no idea they were transporting weapons. They simply followed instructions: sign for an extra container, update one line item, deliver during the night shift. The system was engineered to automatically bypass anomalies when necessary. When an employee checked at the right moment, everything matched perfectly. When no one checked, the second container slipped through quietly. The second corridor focused on synthetic drugs and clandestine migration. Small transportation companies specializing in medical supplies, agricultural chemicals, and veterinary vaccines became the ideal vehicles. Cocaine, fentanyl, and methamphetamine were concealed inside refrigerated containers labeled as vaccines or veterinary medications. Many shipments were quietly rerouted mid-journey thanks to routing software that contained hidden administrative privileges installed years earlier by a common vendor. Parallel to the drugs was a stream of undocumented migrants brought into the United States using student visas, temporary work visas, or stolen identities. Many were forced to work in warehouses tied to the weapons corridor, in hair salons, and in restaurants that belonged to the money laundering network. When immigration records were cross-checked against tax files and Social Security data, hundreds of profiles didn't match. Identities of deceased individuals, children recorded as traveling alone who later appeared on surveillance cameras accompanied by adults. This was no longer a simple human smuggling operation. This was a controlled system supplying cheap, compliant labor directly to the criminal network itself. The third corridor was the money flow. Cash was laundered through a vast network of small businesses scattered across the country. Nail salons, auto repair garages, corner grocery stores, beauty shops, and mini supermarkets. Each location was equipped with high-capacity money counters, heat-sealing machines, and professional-grade receipt printers. Dirty cash was broken into small deposits kept deliberately below mandatory reporting thresholds. At the same time, shell companies received payments on legitimate government contracts despite delivering no products or services whatsoever. Several of these companies had registered mailing addresses that matched entities in Mexico directly tied to the CJNG. When the three corridors intertwined, the network revealed itself as a complete, self-sustaining, and self-protecting ecosystem. Trusted employees were linked to safe houses. Vehicles from safe houses appeared near weapons transport routes. Stolen or fabricated identities used for entry reappeared on the payrolls of money laundering companies. 9 different federal agencies showed signs of compromise at varying levels, from logistics and procurement to customs clearance, identity verification, and database management. Each violation was small, easy to overlook when viewed in isolation. A missed audit, an employee badge left in the wrong place, a system update installed without following security protocols, but when placed side by side, they formed a solid, fortified structure nearly impossible to dismantle using traditional investigative methods. Faced with an unprecedented scale of compromise, the U.S. government was forced to change its approach entirely. Just hours after the full extent of the penetration was confirmed, an interagency task force was stood up under the name Federal Integrity Restoration Task Force, FIRTF. Unlike conventional investigative teams, FIRTF operated across all agency boundaries. They were granted unrestricted access to personnel records, procurement systems, transportation databases, and customs logs without the need for court orders or senior-level approvals. FIRTF began by reviewing more than 3,800 arrest cases related to CJNG over the past 7 years. Cases that were previously considered independent are now being viewed as links in a much larger chain. Phone numbers keep showing up repeatedly across cases. The same bail bondsmen and surety accounts appear over and over. Transportation companies that were investigated multiple times but previously cleared are now under renewed scrutiny. Old hard drives that were once dismissed as unrelated have been reanalyzed and decoded. The payroll systems are being cross-checked against immigration and tax records. The raids unfolded simultaneously across the country. In New Jersey, a storage warehouse tucked behind an abandoned grocery store contained hundreds of unused federal uniforms along with counterfeit ID cards embedded with building access chips. In Phoenix, a router concealed behind a false wall had been quietly routing shipping and personnel data back to Mexico for 3 years without ever triggering a single alert. In Seattle, a rental house leased under the name of a deceased veteran had been operating as a command center, complete with computers directly linked to the federal procurement database, heat maps hanging on the walls, and stacks of detailed building floor plan schematics. This network was engineered to survive even when detected. Whenever one channel was blocked, another would automatically activate in its place. Whenever a key operative was taken out, a replacement was already prepared and standing by. FIRTF wasn't just hunting individuals, they were dissecting the operational logic of the entire system. They retrained their audit teams to look for behavioral red flags, not just financial ones. FIRTF also upgraded their algorithms to better detect duplicate vendors and installed real-time monitoring systems on sensitive shipments. On top of that, they established an interagency hotline that allowed personnel to report suspicious activity without fear of retaliation. A major turning point came from former CJNG members who had defected and were placed under witness protection. They provided invaluable inside information on tactics such as selecting safe locations, rotating personnel, using coded slang in shipping manifests, and embedding encrypted data within seemingly legitimate contracts. Armed with this intelligence, FIRTF shifted from a reactive posture to proactive prevention. By the end of the first quarter, FIRTF had carried out 124 interventions, suspended 37 employees, indicted 19 individuals, and frozen 53 contracts pending a full review of their supply chains. The final chapter of this saga is still being written, and now, to truly win, America must change from within. FIRTF is working tirelessly to close doors that have stood wide open for far too long. But the biggest question still looms. Can the system be fully restored? Or have we unwittingly allowed a second skeleton to grow inside our own framework, one that's patient, adaptive, and always ready to step in and take control the moment the opportunity arises? What began as a small steel safe hidden behind an old printer has now become the most brutal stress test of the nation's institutional resilience. This is no longer just a war against a drug cartel. This is a battle to reclaim trust in the very system we built. And that fight is far from over. There are still many chapters yet to be written. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you believe is the single most urgent step we must take right now to protect national security? I'll be reading every single one and featuring the best insights in the next video. Hit that like if this gave you chills, share to wake others up, and subscribe, plus turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next, because this truth is still unfolding. See you in the next one.